Oh, okay. My name's Rick. Again, I'm the account manager for Joesoftware, and as you probably have all experienced, the cloud is sort of the word of the day, especially when we get messaging from Microsoft these days, and anything to do with Azure is sort of topical for them. So most, with the exception of a couple of clients, I believe, maybe in this room, most of you are on-premise, I believe, customers. And so the question really comes up, does it make sense for us to go to the cloud? And it might. And so this is just a little bit sort of going through a bit of an assessment of whether it might make sense to be going to the cloud. So we're going to go through a little bit of Cloud Computing 101. If you're an IT person, I apologize because I'm sure you know all of this information. Why should you care where your GP's hosted? What are some of these basic cloud trends, especially with regards to GP and ERP solutions? How do you make the business case around this? And who should help you do a cloud assessment? So for me, I like things that I know, and so I went to Wiki and basically said, okay, well, what's cloud computing? And they had this analogy of power, basically. Your power is generated, comes through transmission lines, and ultimately you're in your house or you're in your place of business, and you're utilizing that power and you're paying your monthly bill. And in essence, that's what cloud computing is doing for you. It basically is an infrastructure that really is all of your storage and computing power without having to worry about how they work. Really, it's a metaphor for it's internet-based, so you're typically hooking up through the internet and accessing all of that data through the internet. And often you're hearing it now as a service, so software as a service or infrastructure as a service. In essence, though, it really is, you're not worried about all of the infrastructure and behind, you're just worried about really what's in your office and how are you using it. The other thing to take note of is where that data center is hosted. Where's your data being held? In some cases, it doesn't matter. Some cases, it can be US or anywhere in the world. There are some scenarios where it is preferred that it is actually in Canada. If there's any security around your information, there's the Personal Information Protection and Electronics Document Act, which would mean that if you have customers' information, it needs to be hosted in Canada. It's one of the reasons why Microsoft and Amazon and Google and other larger data companies are actually have data centers in Canada now because of that law. So, why should you care where your GP is hosted? For you, and I'm sort of got the picture of the finance manager here more than maybe the IT person, but it's about data accuracy, security of accounting information, reporting that tells the financial stories. You ensure the right people have the access to the information. You're meeting audit requirements. You're driving out costs through efficiency, and you're ensuring that your GP is current. This is just, there's a number of different things that you can get on cloud information, but I like this one. It's nice and simple. It's looking at some of the reasons why people are moving to the cloud. Lower cost of ownership is at the top of the list. Ability to scale a solution is next. Lower upfront costs, ease of use, reducing costs, and configuration. So costs come up there a couple of times, but so does configuration and ease of use. Cost, of course, is one of the sort of challenging pieces of this. Every infrastructure is different. I took two different things that I found on the internet. These are not studies or anything that we've done. But I wanted to highlight two things. One is, of course, in both of these scenarios, in year one, they're showing the upfront costs on on-premise is more expensive, and that's because you have to invest in the infrastructure. Then in this second graph, you'll actually see in a 5-year period, it's kind of highlighting it here, you've got to reinvest often in that infrastructure, so you've got to incur more capital costs on infrastructure. The question becomes then, well, how does it look after 5 years or longer? Again, on this first picture, it's close, and there's no right answer, right? It might be less expensive, it might be more expensive. Here, what they're showing is there's a convergence. There tends to be convergence over time that your costs equal out. So the reality of it is, I would say, costs are a perspective of this. It may not be less, but there are other benefits that you want to look at. Right now, it looks like about 1/4 of the installations, again, another piece of information I found, are actually for ERP solutions, are actually found on cloud-based solutions. And in particular for SMBs, and I believe everybody in this room, small and medium-sized business, would be considered in that group. What you want to notice is that the confidence is growing and more companies are trending towards this usage. It's at approximately a compounded growth rate of about 40% a year. Security has been one of those things that have created a barrier for a lot of companies to get into cloud computing and various uses of cloud computing. What I find interesting on this particular graph, the main one here, is that cloud beginners, security is number one. We're concerned about their security. But as they use cloud infrastructure more and more, security becomes less and less of an issue, so that when you get to sort of cloud focus, and I can't remember exactly the period of time these people become cloud explorers and cloud focus, but ultimately the message is security becomes less of an issue because the confidence is built in there. And you know what, right now, many companies, something like 56% of companies, have admitted we're storing confidential information on the cloud. Our trust is actually quite high on the cloud. Some other notables, or top-cited benefits, is faster access to infrastructure, scalability, and increased availability. So, again, why should you care? Because moving GP to the cloud might help you do your job better. And I use the word might or may help you do your job better. Uh-oh, what did I do here? Mitchell, I lost my page. How did that happen?
Where are you in here?
Oh, there we go, sorry. So the question becomes then, how do you make the business case? Because there's a lot of different aspects of this. Some of the things, particularly for your GP, that are going to influence this are what degree of customizations or integrations do you have? How many third-party products are there? Do you need? Can you use a shared SQL server? Or do you need a private server? The bandwidth availability and your internet connection, your true cost of ownership. What does it look like over that 5-year time? The degree of IT management you want within your organization is an important consideration. That database location I talked about, so where does it need to be? Does it need to be in Canada or can it be elsewhere? And then ultimately, is it part of your upgrade cycle? Because the logic of this is that you probably, if there's a consideration to move to a cloud infrastructure, you probably want to consider it during that upgrade period. So who should help you do a cloud assessment? Hopefully you would come to us, especially if we're talking around GP. And we've recently got into a partnership with a company called WattServe. WattServe has a Waterloo-based office in Canada, which is something that we like, with a very significant data center there. And we have, actually, this gentleman, Jeff Bombard, sorry, Jeff, I messed up your name. And we're going to get him patched through on GoToMeeting. Got the sound cord? We got it?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep. Okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. This up.
Okay, am I ready to go?
1 minute.
Oh, okay, great. Can you see my screen okay?
Sure. Okay, we good?
Okay, great. We're ready to go. And can you see my screen? Can you see my PowerPoint?
Hold on, we had it, 1 sec. Okay, you're good.
Okay, great. You can
Muted.
and everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, well, thanks, Rick, for the opportunity to present. My name is Jeff Bombard from Joesoftware, based out of Waterloo, Canada, and have data centers across the U.S., Canada, and Europe. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about Great Plains in the cloud. Does it make sense? Rick did a great job talking about what's happening in the industry today and where cloud ERP is going. Here at Joesoftware, we've seen some great growth. We've been around for 10 years. 50% growth year over year. There's certainly been a lot of growth in the market in the last year. A lot of acceptance with the Dynamics product, especially with some growth in Great Plains, which I'm going to talk about today. So Joesoftware is a Brookfield asset management company. We're out of Toronto and New York. So we've got some strong financial backing, and I'll talk a little bit about how we've gone into the Azure data center and Azure hosting marketplace. But as I mentioned, we've been doing this for 10 years, really when ERP hosting was in its infancy. And today, there's been some high growth, particularly around the public cloud, which is Azure, which I'll explain a couple different ways you can take Great Plains into a managed service cloud environment. So there's a few things that any managed services company needs to have to take a Great Plains on-premise installation and bring it into the cloud. One is experience. So Joesoftware, as myself, has been in ERP and Microsoft for over 20 years. But that experience is real important to work with a partner like Joesoftware, where you've got application experience from Joesoftware, and then we have the experience with taking your infrastructure and outsourcing it and making sure you go live in the cloud. So support is really important. Our experience is around all Dynamics products. So you may know beyond GP, there's AX and there's NAV and there's CRM and Office 365, which if you're a GP customer and you have CRM or Office 365, those can obviously stay integrated and be hosted. But 24/7, 365 support, even if you're a 9-to-5 business, is important. Because a lot of things go on in the background and tuning the system and keeping it going. And then global reach, we have multiple data centers. Our main data centers are in the midsection of North America, in Toronto and Michigan. But we have customers still on GP who may have a global instance, or particularly on AX. So having multiple data centers is important. And then also for redundancy and data backup, because one of the things in having redundancy is making sure that your system is always available. And then reliable solutions. You can have a plain Jane, Great Plains financial system. Still can be easily hosted, but also, as we all know in the Great Plains world, we all have multiple ISVs. Whether it's Notice or Macorma or even Management Reporter, so ISVs can be hosted, even custom solutions or other Microsoft technologies, right? We also provide managed services around Office 365. and so you can host, your entire environment. And basically, forklift is a term in the industry. Take what you have on premise and in stages, bring it to the cloud. So we have a really high retention rate. The only customers that have left us, if they get acquired, maybe they have to go to the corporate hosting company. And so all of our customers have always stuck around. And then another important thing is the accreditations around the data centers, so making sure, of course, they're secure. So all of our data centers are fully secure with SOC 1, SOC 2, and HIPAA US, but all the accreditations that you'll need to make sure your data is redundant. And then, of course, we have the Canadian data centers, so Canadian customers can keep their data in Canada. So a couple key highlights, and really what is important when you go to the cloud is, there's a couple terms that really aren't on here, but accessibility and ease of use is certainly really important. And one of the key highlights when we go to the cloud is taking some of that burden off of your on-premise environment. So the person who's actually working, to keep your system up and running can actually now do things for the business, right? And look at the future instead of having, to run the infrastructure. So accessibility, ease of use, and then just having the peace of mind and security, that it's running, and someone else is doing it, right? You're outsourcing your IT. So a couple of those highlights and specifics is really pricing around the cloud is all inclusive, and it's per user per month. And, that's how you get charged. So you start with 10 users of Great Plains, and if you add a user because you're growing, and you add that user within the next month, you get charged for it, or conversely, if you take a user out, you don't get charged for it. So it's really ease of use around, or the flexibility around pricing. And I mentioned this before, but, whether it's just Great Plains financials, or multiple ISVs, or, almost one-off engineering where you really got a custom solution, that can be looked at to bring to the cloud. And a real important aspect that I mentioned before is the accessibility piece, and that goes around the service level agreement, right? And in cloud speak, that's called an SLA. And there's a guarantee that you get in your contract, right? And that's 99.99, that the infrastructure is going to be there all the time for you to use. And, we live up to that agreement. And if we don't, there's chargeback to the customer. And then on the right-hand side of this slide, we all know about security and ransomware and viruses and attacks, and it's prevalent in our society today. And one of the reasons, actually, that people do go to the cloud is because of that increased security. And, we haven't had any downtime in 9 years, really since our existence. And, so that level of peace of mind is important, when you move to the cloud. And of course, we've got state-of-the-art infrastructure and security in the data centers, but of course also around the Great Plains application. And then technical support is important. Obviously, in 24/7 support is there for your application and for your infrastructure. We're the infrastructure experts, and usually the first call. And if it's a question on the infrastructure and you're running invoices and it's slow, a lot of and if it's an application question, how to run a report, we'll send you to Joesoftware. And then the flexible terms, I kind of mentioned that before. There's two different types of cloud, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But Azure, which is public cloud, is a month-to-month contract. It's available from Microsoft. And then, we offer a private cloud also, and that's a 36-month contract. So, when you move to the cloud, the big question, and Rick mentioned this before, is a return on investment and total cost of ownership. And we certainly assist with all of our customers
Unmuted.
to move to the cloud, to look at the financials and look at their monthly costs. One of the advantages, of course, is there's no upfront investment. A lot of customers today, when they look at an upgrade and, they're going to GP16, they certainly start to look and instead of making that, big investment potentially for a hardware upgrade, we'll look at moving to the cloud. So, the on-premise on the left, today, you're paying for your facility, you're of course paying for your software, and your infrastructure and your hardware. When you move to the cloud, virtually 65% of that to support the operations and the infrastructure are being outsourced to Joesoftware and Joesoftware. You're always going to pay for your software, and then you've got your facility that you run today. So there's a big switch in your CapEx investment, and then your operational charges going forward.
Jeff, we got about 2 minutes left, so.
Okay, great. I'll try to be a little more short-winded. And actually, I'm going to skip this one, but this is just a little reinforcement from Microsoft, and I can send this deck to the audience later, and you can look at this one in more detail. But it just shows the shift from on-premise to the cloud and what's happening today. I do have a couple more slides. And what I mentioned before, you have a couple options. Today, the Microsoft Azure Public Cloud, just like a public utility, is offered through Microsoft. Of course, Joesoftware offers managed services around that with Joesoftware. The SLA is a little less than the one that we offer in the private cloud, which is in the middle, but it's still a very capable option as it is Microsoft, and they have their infrastructure and their data centers all over the world. And then in the middle is the Joesoftware private cloud, which is an option, and again, it's essentially the same as the Azure public cloud. And you do have an option to do a hybrid. And some people are doing a hybrid today where you may be using Office 365 or Microsoft CRM, and then maybe using the Joesoftware private cloud. Actually, and then this is my last slide. And then the licensing options, you can purchase licenses today, via subscription, or you can bring around. So there's a lot of flexibility on either cloud that you choose. So that actually is my last slide. I had one more. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions, or if we need to move on to the next presentation, we can do that certainly.
Yeah, we're going to move on, Jeff. Thanks for your time, and yeah, we'll get a whole new presentation and add it to the decks that they can access. Okay, so with that, thanks everybody. Sorry we're a little bit late on lunch, but I believe lunch is served.
Rick, you there?
Can you hear me, Jeff?
Unmuted.
Hello, Jeff? Anyway, please help yourself. Consultants will be all around. Sit with one, talk to them, and enjoy. We'll probably back up the next piece until...
I can't hear you.
I don't know what's going on here.
I'm not sure if there's any questions.
Turn off the sound. And yes, so please enjoy lunch, talk with a consultant, and we'll probably get back here at 1:30. Fun with technology.